On this episode of the Dairyland Initiative podcast, we're going to be talking about animal outcome measures. Hi, I'm Courtney Hallbach.
And I'm Nigel Cook.
And this is the Dairyland Initiative podcast,
where we get to discuss issues related to the housing and management of dairy cattle.
Let's dive in.
Well, Courtney, I thought today we seem to have been talking a lot about animal welfare in our work lives the last few weeks.
I have told you in the past that I want these episodes to be timeless.
Oh.
So I don't want to talk about things that are happening now, but...
Well, it feels topical to me.
Yes. Last week, we had the opportunity to meet with top welfare researchers here in the United States.
We did.
And some really great producers to just talk about the state of dairy cattle welfare.
Yep.
And I think it got us thinking about what should we talk about on the podcast. And one of the topics that kept being brought up was these animal outcome measures. And so...
And I realized... we haven't talked about this before.
Hey, that's on you, Dr. Cook.
I don't know how we've missed this.
This is topical. I'm glad we're doing it.
Thank goodness for that. We've talked a lot about one animal outcome measure, and that'll be lameness.
I wonder why.
So we've done lameness. We're not going to do it again.
Okay, great.
We might allude to it a little bit, though.
Fine.
Because
you can't help yourself.
I can't help myself. But what we're really talking about here are these physical measures that are often used in animal welfare audits. Things like assessment of hocks and knee injuries and neck and back injuries and tail breaks and hygiene. Mm-hmm. So these are scoring systems trying to objectively measure how comfortable the cow's been, what is a physical welfare in the barns that we house our animals in.
And what's great is that anybody could observe this. This isn't something that you have to go and look into records or anything. This is in the barn.
It's observable. We're looking at the animals and we're asking them what their state is. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's what we're going to focus on today. So the number one thing I think is hock injuries.
Yeah, because that relates back to the stalls, right?
But also it's actually far more visible than lameness. While we've talked about lameness, you have to sort of actively understand, how a cow walks to understand lameness. If you enter a milking parlor and look at cows being milked, you see this. It's front and center.
Yeah.
It's such an obvious issue for the dairy industry. So going into a herd and scoring hocks and determining, how many cows have hair loss, abrasion, sometimes open sort of weeping ulcers or swellings, that tells you a lot about their physical comfort. Mm-hmm. So that's the number one. And when you look at the literature worldwide, we have a lot of hock injuries.
Yeah, it's not so good.
It's not great.
Kind of surprised to see that the worldwide average is around 53%.
Yes.
Yeah,
And if you remember what lameness was, lameness was about 22%.
Yeah.
So it's double lameness.
Yikes.
Now, I'll also put a little caveat there, is that the scoring systems for hock injuries are not as well practiced or organized or developed as the lameness scoring systems.
Okay, so it's not as standardized.
It's not standardized. Okay. Yeah. So is it any hair loss? Is it hair loss above a certain amount? Is it any kind of dried scab, or is it an open active weeping ulcer? How much swelling? There's not a lot of consistency on this one. So we'll come back to that at the end. But
Nonetheless, there's still room for improvement.
There's a lot of room for improvement. We have way too many. So yes, this data doesn't put the US in a great light. We're all the way up to 80% here and 20% here. So we have the worst and the best surveys in our homeland right now. But again, the average above 50, not great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what causes it? What is it associated with?
It really gets back to their lying surface.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's associated with a lack of bedding. I think with the advent of mats and mattresses, it got worse. And if you think about the nature of that surface, oftentimes they had sort of a waxed abrasive cover that covered those rubber crumb cells to give, grip, whatever. But it also creates hair loss when you drag your leg over the top of it. So I believe a lot of the hair loss over these bony prominences, the hock here, are friction injuries. It's caused by friction with a lack of bedding between the animal and the surface that they're lying on. So old video.
Yeah, when I was editing these slides, this one's pretty grainy.
Really watch the lower leg towards the end of this video. See, this cow's kind of repositioning herself.
On a mattress.
On a mattress surface.
With a little bit of bedding.
See that lower leg gets dragged into position, and that I can feel the hairs being pulled out of over the hock area. So that bit of repositioning right at the end, because the cow's on a firm surface, the stall isn't quite big enough, she's fidgeting. That's where I think we're getting the hair loss.
And now, would you think adding more bedding is going to help alleviate this problem? But
it helps for a little while. You fidget, and it doesn't take very much to bare the surface and remove that bedding. So that's the issue. And when we look at the relationship between hock injuries and lameness, so this is herd lameness, and then herd prevalence of hock injuries, there is a relationship. Yeah. So, but it only explains about 22% of the variation. So there is a link between lameness and hock injury, and I think traditionally there's been the hock problem makes the cow lame.
Yeah.
I haven't believed that.
Okay.
I think we've got that the wrong way round. I think the lameness exacerbates the hock injury. Now, ultimately, if you've got a big swollen ulcerated hock, that will contribute to lameness. But I think the foot lameness usually comes first. So there's kind of some roundabout thought there that I'll try to justify now.
Oh, really? You're going to try and justify what you're saying?
Really, when we start to now talk about the worst kind of hock injuries, the swellings and the abrasions, I think those are pressure injuries. So we've talked about friction, removing the hair, but to get that an ulcer is basically necrosis of the skin. That's a pressure injury. So how does that come about? Well, lame cows, we know, struggle to get up and down.
Yep.
We've gone through that at length. And so when you're lame, you tend to stay lying. Your lying bout tends to become longer. So they don't change position as much because it's difficult for them to do that. So they stay putting pressure on
a lot
these
of pressure on their
bony
joints.
prominences for longer. And I think that's what leads to these pressure injuries. And humans have these, bed-bound geriatric patients. They have these decubitus ulcers or bed sores, pressure injuries, lying in a bed. Well, these cows are lying on a relatively firm surface.
So I can see why the lameness would lead to these hock lesions.
And actually one really nice study from the Nottingham group here, this 2013 study, showed that lame cows in the month prior to going into the herd and assessing hocks were more likely to have severe hock injuries at that assessment, confirming to me that the lameness happens first, you get the change in behavior, you get the pressure, you get the ulcers, you get the severe hock injuries.
Well, I'm glad there's research to back up your thoughts.
Thank goodness. I love research that confirms my own wildly held beliefs. I only quote that research. I don't quote the other stuff.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was going to say, you're very selective.
So I'm going to go back to the first study I ever did at the University of Wisconsin.
When you still had black hair on your head?
A little bit, yeah. And a bit more of it, too.
Oh, good.
Less shine on the forehead.
Yeah, where's the makeup artist today?
Took the day off, I think. God, I need it, though. So we're talking about way back, Courtney, way back. Visited a bunch of farms, Wisconsin farms local to us here in Madison. And this was the one where we kind of discovered differences between mat and sand-bedded herds with lameness. But also in that paper, we also saw fairly big differences with sand and mattress herds with hock injuries.
And you were looking both at free stalls and tie stalls.
Yeah, both didn't make any difference. Free stalls, about 57% hock injuries, down to 8% on sand in a free stall. In a tie stall, 42 to 8%. So big difference in hock injuries between this driven by surface type. In certain deep-bedded herds, we saw some non-traditional hock injuries.
No, there was a herd that we were called out to where we were walking by. And
I'd forgotten that.
Yeah, I was there
You
too.
were there. You've been here quite a long time, Courtney.
It's been a bit. These are relatively new photos, Dr. Cook.
That's
you
true.
You got to check your timeline.
Yeah, well, I bet this was 8-10 years ago.
Probably.
Yeah.
Anyways.
There's been a pandemic. There's been a blip.
Yeah, there was.
You have to add one for everything now.
Yeah.
Anyway, these deep-bedded herds will occasionally have some weird lesions, and sometimes this is called the calcaneus, Courtney, this bit of bone that sticks out above the hock. And you'll see some hair loss and abrasion there, but also on the medial side, on the inside of the hock, you'll see some hair loss and abrasion and sometimes ulceration. And sometimes these hocks will just absolutely blow up, and you probably have to cull the cow in certain instances. So these medial or dorsal hock injuries, you don't see them as often in the mat and mattress herds. These are in the deep-bedded herds.
Yeah, and this one, it took you a bit to figure out what was going on. But
No, it didn't.
Yes, if I remember correctly, Dr. Cook, we had to walk around the pen for a bit.
Couple of minutes.
And then it was like, aha moment.
No.
As to what's happening. You got a picture?
Yeah, I took a picture. Yeah.
Of course you did.
Yeah. We'd seen this before. We've seen it a few times, and it's when we have a cow position issue within the stall, where the stalls aren't, the bedding depth is a little bit subpar, so you get this exposed rear curb, and then because of the lying position, that back leg drifts into the alleyway, so it slides off the stall platform, and they end up putting all the pressure on the medial side of the hock.
Mind blown.
Yeah. And the fix was actually just to try to get the cow up on the platform a little bit on this farm. I seem to remember just get them to keep their legs on the platform to avoid this. So deep-bedded herds do have hock injuries, but they're a little different for different reasons. But usually if you keep your nice deep bed well-groomed, leveled with the rear curb, you usually avoid those kinds of things.
Okay.
And we see a much substantial difference between mattress herds, mat herds, and sand bedding.
Yep. So simple management changes, but bedding is key.
And that, again, in the literature has been confirmed over the years. Deep bedding, especially sand, has a beneficial effect, reduces the risk of more typical hock injury. Well-maintained bedding, so that gets back to enough leveling, making sure you've got enough substrate over that abrasive surface. That's important. Increasing resting length is interesting because, again, it keeps the animal on the platform, so it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, but you also had said... Oh, you mean stall length.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah, the length of the stall is important. Keep the cow's legs on the stall and not sort of rubbing against anything at the back. But that's probably deep bedding stall focused as well. And then if you're mixed grazing housing, what they find in those herds is that if you decrease the duration of the housing period and increase the amount of time on pasture, then...
I could have told you that.
Yeah, well... You have to prove things sometimes.
Apparently.
So there you go. So those are the big factors that we've recognized where we can reduce the risk for hock lesions. And again, we've shown this over and over again. Now just looking at deep bedding, looking at severe injuries here, the swellings, the abrasion, we can go from a fairly dramatic, nearly 30% of cows affected to less than 7% with this type of material. This study, we did look at what I'm going to call knees, but it's really the carpus.
Okay.
And that's our next topic. It's the front knee.
All right.
Because a cow's knee's on the back leg, but we often refer to their carpi as knees. So we do carpus scoring or knee scoring. And there are not such big differences actually between deep bedding and mattresses on the knee scores. So we'll kind of get into that a little bit in a second.
Now, it's not overnight that you can fix hock lesions.
Yeah, this was a conversation I had with Dave Kelton from University of Guelph way back, and he was saying, Nigel, are you aware of any studies that tell us how long it takes for these things to heal? Because we're doing audits. We're telling farmers, oh, you've got too many hock lesions. And we have no idea or recommendation for, yes, use deep bedding, but we don't really know how long it takes to resolve those issues.
Yeah.
So he did a nice study. This was a PhD. I've got the thesis on my computer somewhere, but they asked the question, how long does it take to heal hock lesions? Well, a while. and some of them never do. So to be honest, you've got a big swollen ulcerated hock, they may not completely heal. So that's
So you'll have some chronics.
number one. In terms of the hair loss, about a month. Yeah.
Okay.
Move the animal to a favorable environment. Could be deep bedded stalls, could be a bedded pack, could be pasture. You're looking at about 30 days.
Okay.
Where you'll see some healing. 6 times faster on sand and pasture, 3 times faster on a bedded pack compared to a mat or mattress.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
so
like that.
at least we've got some recommendation.
Yeah.
So you can tell people we can visit you in a couple of months' time, and if you've implemented a plan, it should be better.
Should see improvement.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get on to those carpal or knee
carpal.
injuries.
Say that in your British accent.
Carpal.
Okay.
What should I say? Carpal? Capal? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about. knee lesion. Let's just go with
Well,
knee.
now that we have established what you're talking about when you say knee.
All right. And if you go to the literature, what you realize first off is much fewer studies. Not many people have looked at knee injuries, and so there are many fewer studies. The Norway, Canada, UK, USA, pretty much it.
But still
quite
high.
common.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still
48%.
around that half the cows with some kind of hair loss or abrasion.
And is this on all stall surfaces?
Across a lot of stall surfaces, because now we go to our sand-bedded herds, and they are not immune to this, especially the recycled sand herds. So if you wander around a parlor of a recycled sand-bedded herd and look at those knees, there's a bit of hair loss going on. Yeah, you will see some hair loss. You kind of see it here, and this is pretty typical. That as they're getting up, her knee sinks into the sand bedding. There's a little bit of grinding and friction going on. You're going to get some hair loss. You'll get it on water beds where there's no, as that knee goes in, the water dissipates, and that thin piece of rubber is against concrete. You'll get hair loss in that situation. So, does it matter? Is probably the next question. And honestly, when we compare the prevalence of knee injuries and the prevalence of lameness, there's a tilt of a line there, but there's not a heck of a lot of relationship.
Okay.
And so it's annoying that it happens, but it doesn't seem to contribute significantly to a lot of lame cows.
Okay.
Occasionally, I think you'll get an injured animal with a big swollen knee, where it's obviously contributing to her pain and suffering and potentially having to remove that cow from the herd. But that's rare relative to what we're kind of focused on here, which is mainly hair loss.
So definitely keep an eye out for it, but it might be something that we do live with a little.
And that gets back to, should you monitor this? We tried a couple of the animal welfare audits I've helped develop. We thought we could do a good job of this, but actually it's remarkably difficult to score knees. In the parlor, you don't see them.
You don't see them, and then when they're at the feed bunk.
And the feed bunk, the feed curb kind of hides them, and it's dark. It's actually more difficult than you think to get good scores. And if there's no or very little relationship to lameness, why are we doing it?
Yeah.
So it's kind of fallen off the important things to do for me in terms of animal welfare auditing and looking at physical comfort. We'll come on to the scoring. There is still a lack of consistency, but we're getting better.
Okay.
So in terms of trying to work out what is a mild lesion, what is a severe lesion, I think we're coalescing around, a common scoring system, but globally still quite a lot of variation. But cows get injured in other places, Courtney, and neck injuries can be quite common on farms, and they usually occur here up between the poll and the withers, right on the top of the neck there. And you'll often see some hair loss. Sometimes you'll see a callus formation. There'll be a thickening there, and it's usually related to the feed bunk.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a post and rail system where the rail tends to be either too low or too close to the cow. Often with the rails, we'll position them forward of the feed curb, so that we're not putting a lot of pressure on the cow. And you can imagine cow spending 4.5 hours eating there every day. She's reaching for feed. She's rubbing that part of her neck up and down, putting pressure on it. You're going to get some rubs and some hair loss. And again, fairly easy solution for this. So you see these rubs, you address the height and the positioning of that feed rail.
Simple.
Not so much with headlocks because the rail tends to be higher, but you'll sometimes see rubs either side of the neck, but not usually on top with headlocks just because of the positioning. And then you get weird stuff.
Yeah, so I'll get a lot of emails with pictures of broken backs, it seems, and everyone's like, what the heck is causing this? Yeah,
back injuries, not normal anatomy.
Nope.
So the cow's back, some cows do have a bit of an odd curvature to them. We're not talking about that. We're talking about sort of like this one, divots.
Yeah, big divots.
And what's happening here is broken spinous processes. So the little vein that sticks up of your spine, you have like a single bone where your muscles attached to it, and those can crack and break. And so, obviously, painful.
Yeah.
And often these are related to stall design.
Yeah.
So this kind of injury is happening with neck rails, with lower divider rails, and this drives, the recommendations that we have for the angle of the lower rail, the lying position of the cow, so she's not putting too much pressure on this point, creating these kind of rubs and divots. And this one's a classic sort of, you can see where the neck rail pressed into the cow's back. So that really gets back to stall design. Yeah. And we've got a couple of podcasts on that.
Pretty good podcast. Not biased at all.
We've covered it. Can you remember when we stopped docking tails in the US, Courtney? So this is a quiz.
2018?
You got it. Yeah. 2018, we basically banned broken tails, not through legislation, but through animal welfare audits. So the National Milk Producers Federation Dairy Farm Program instituted a ban where you had to stop tail docking. And there was a lot of uproar about that because there were some folks that really believed that docking tails were a big part of keeping cows clean and udder health management. I think for the most part we've managed cell counts are lower and udder health's better, and now all of our cows have tails. So
most part, there's a few stragglers, some older cows,
but we've created another problem, Courtney.
Yeah, we have.
Because when you leave the tail on a cow,
it's a nice place to grip on and be a rudder,
it's
right?
A handle. It's a handle, and sometimes surprisingly easy to break a tail, to just create a dislocation between the bones and the tail. You can see the sort of deviation in this one. Here in the US, Courtney, we used to dock tails. Now we don't. January 18, you're 2018, we were spot on there.
I'll win at trivia.
So it does mean, are there any 10-year-old cows out there, or 7, 8-year-old cows? There may still be a few old cows on our farms that were tail docked prior to that, but shouldn't see any in the vast majority of animals on the farm anymore. So we're looking at tails. We don't see too many of these anymore, but oftentimes it's very subtle. Sometimes you even have to just feel down the tail.
We were practicing audit one time, and the tail visibly looks fine, but as you're rubbing your hand down the length,
you feel a little knobble.
Knobs. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's an indicator, for the most part, of aggressive animal handling. I think farmers always like to create some story that the automatic scrapers somehow tangle the tail and break it. If it happens, it's rare. This is mainly somebody jacking the tail and going too far, doing it too hard, and click, and they're creating a break. And so it says something about animal handling, stockmanship, and oftentimes when there are herd problems, and you can go to herds where 20% of the cows have broken tails. The standard, I believe, is less than 5%. Should be none.
Yeah,
We shouldn't see this. But it is easy to do. And if people aren't trained and if they don't know, they can cause quite a lot of problems. Sometimes it's not on the farm itself. Sometimes it's the heifer rearing facility. Yeah. And so you can kind of look at this by age range. And sometimes we have to go and visit the heifer facility to see where the breaks are occurring.
So start looking at the heifer pen.
Yep, start with the heifer pen and go from there. But this one's pretty subtle. You can kind of see just a slight little deviation. But yeah, oftentimes in an investigation we're feeling, we're putting our hands down the tail to feel exactly what's happening. Last assessment tool that we use is hygiene scoring.
And that's to look at the bedding.
Yeah, we used to use hygiene scoring, or still do, from an udder health perspective. So I had a scoring system that scored udder hygiene as well as other areas of the animal, but we were focused on kind of risk of environmental mastitis infection. Dirtier udders tend to increase the risk of mastitis. Not difficult. From an animal welfare perspective, we're not really there to do that. We're there to assess, as you say, the lying surface.
Yeah.
How clean was the area that the cow lies in? And obviously, if you're doing an animal welfare audit, the day before, the farmer can
make everything, top off with fresh bedding.
Put a little bit of fresh bedding down and, it would be natural for them to do that. But the way we assess it is to look at the animals. And so you can look at the history of the bedding management on the farm by looking at hygiene scoring. These scoring systems are difficult to standardize, and we did it by focusing on where the cow contacts the lying surface. So it's two places, the sort of upper leg area and the lower flank area, so the belly.
Yeah.
So thigh and belly, two places to score, and then you just have to decide how much muck and manure is going to trigger your scoring, saying this is a problem.
And this is the buildup of manure.
Usually manure. Yeah. So in an adult cow, very simply, we said if it's bigger than your hand, or about 10 inches diameter. For a calf, we say bigger than your fist, so 5 inches diameter. So if you have manure in one of these locations for cows, bigger than your diameter of your hand, then that triggered the score.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you had it in both locations, that was the 3. If you have it in just one location, it was a score 2. So 1 was clean, 2 was one location, 3 was both locations.
Easy.
That was the plan. I think for the most part it's been relatively easy to institute that as a scoring system for cows and heifers, as you can see here. And you can see these sort of dry, crusty manure lumps. That's what we're really talking about here. Relatively easy to do for calves as well. And I think that's important to assess for baby calves as well as adult cows.
It's different than staining.
It's not staining, yeah. So this one has a sort of stain of old whatever. So there's a darkening of the hair. So it's a nice black and white cow, and she's kind of got a belly that's got what we would call sort of mud staining there. That wouldn't trigger the score. So, and again, think of what we're trying to do. We're trying to assess the hygiene of the bedding surface, and it serves its purpose. Scoring, samplings, it's difficult.
Done it with you a couple times. It is a bit difficult.
It's different on an 80 cow dairy than it is an 8,000 cow dairy. So what you're trying to do with all these scores when you do an audit is to capture the at-risk group. So you're looking for the animals that are particularly at risk of these issues. So for lameness, for example, we focused on the high-producing older cows. That was the at-risk group, because you want to try to make these scores as repeatable as possible. If one person visits the farm on one day, we want a person visiting the farm the next day or the day after to get a similar read of what's going on.
So to give some consistency.
And we want to limit bias, unconscious or conscious or otherwise. So you may, select a pen at risk and do all the animals in the pen. In larger herds, that's where sample size calculations have to come into play. If you've got a 400 cow pen, there are calculations where it says, score X number of animals and you'll be within 95% of the true measurement. I'm not going to get into sample size calculations for this podcast. But safe to say, more is usually better, and we'll often look for these measurements for as many animals as we can practically do to make sure it's accurate.
Okay.
Where you do it is important as well. So we've kind of mentioned how obvious hocks lesions were in the parlor. Mm-hmm. Well, that's kind of a good place to do the scoring. Try not to interrupt the milkers too much, but usually in a parlor you've got good access to the hocks and reasonable lighting. But it's always nice to carry a flashlight with you as well.
You didn't say a torch.
I didn't. No, I'm getting there. 27 years picking up the lingo. In a parallel parlor, the cow's butt's facing you, so you can look at both hocks, either side, inside and out. A herringbone parlor, you're a bit more limited because you've only got the one leg and the outside facing you. So you just do the best you can. This is the nature of this kind of scoring. It's different on different farms, which perhaps isn't completely fair, but that's kind of the way it's done. And what you're scoring is the worst one for each cow. So the worst one you see for each cow. And again, these little flashlights are good. I'll show you a picture that you can get them at pretty much most gas stations. They're usually about 1/4 or an inch diameter, and that's useful for assessing how much swelling there is. Mm-hmm. So those are important. Knees, we've mentioned, they're difficult, and a lot of audits have stopped assessing knees. But you can assess the severes, the swelling from behind, from the parlor pit. So in some systems, we'll score the hock, and then we'll just score the knee from behind and say, is there a big swollen one or not?
Easy enough.
So we're not scoring hair loss from the front. Because I don't recommend anybody should disrupt all the cows during milking by, walking along the front, scoring. The swelling's the big thing. Yeah. Exactly. Necks, backs, and other things, generally as the group walks to the parlor, because we're locomotion scoring as they exit the parlor. So we're lameness scoring on the way out. We're looking for those other things on the way in. So they're fairly low frequency usually, and so you're picking up those kind of neck and back injuries fairly easily as the cows walk to the parlor. And some things you do have to do in the pen.
Yeah, like looking at tail breaks and hygiene.
Tail breaks and hygiene usually done on a sample size basis, walking the pen. Doable. So just to get back to this consistency, and we worked with Jen Walker on development of some of the audits she put into place, and really were challenged by her team when we said, you should score any hair loss or any abrasion. They'd go, well, some of these hocks aren't, these cows are not lame, they look fairly good. Is this fair? So we looked at a lot of pictures of hocks, and we came to the conclusion it's not any amount of hair loss. There's a bit of latitude here. So there's hair loss more than an inch in any one area.
And that would get you a score of?
It would go to a 2. So 1 is...
In a 3-point scale.
You could have a tiny little bit of hair loss, less than an inch in diameter, and you'd still be a 1 on this scale. So no swelling, small amount of hair loss, okay. And then the 2 score is triggered by hair loss above an inch in any one location.
And a 3?
Well, little bit of swelling as well could trigger a 2. So there's a degree of swelling. But a 3, which is mainly what we're worried about.
Yeah.
So that one is ulceration, blood, serous discharge, swelling more than an inch. And I'll show you how to measure that in a second. But not a little abrasion. Okay, so if you've got a little healing abrasion, that stays as a 2. So we kind of came to the conclusion
is good.
That's resolving. Yeah. The farm should have the benefit of the doubt on that one.
So anything open is...
Anything open, active, that's a 3.
So what would we score the little balding patch on the back of your head?
Oh, what? I don't have anything balding there. It's all up the front. I would clearly be a 2 on that front. Yeah, but not severe at this point. So this little flashlight I keep talking about 1 inch in diameter, that's telling you whether there's more than 1 inch of swelling at this point here. And that's important because a normal hock isn't shaped like a point. It doesn't sort of go to one inflection point and then come out. There's a straightening before, and until you look at a lot of hocks, you don't really notice that.
Yeah,
but it's that point where it straightens, that's where you get the swelling, and that's where you measure it. And from the side as well. And so obviously looking, if you have access to multiple views, you can see on this cow she has a swelling on the side because we're able to look from the back, but we're not able to do that all the time. So swelling sounds easy to measure. It's a little tricky. So that's an important. Use the available views that you have.
And practice too, it sounds like.
And practice. Yeah, practice for consistency, yeah. So that's our little walk through animal outcome measures, Courtney.
Well, Dr. Cook, I feel pretty confident about walking out onto a farm and being able to assess the cows, whether it's in the parlor, the transfer lane, or the pen, thanks to
it's all about looking at cows just a little bit more closely in a more regimented way. So,
well, thanks for that, Dr. Cook, and we look forward to seeing you on our next podcast.
Thanks for joining us.
The Dairyland Initiative is supported by industry leaders who are advancing cow comfort worldwide. We would like to say a special thank you to our premier sponsor, Saputo, who is providing the global community with high-quality dairy products made from high-quality milk from healthy and well-cared-for animals. We'd also like to say thank you to our other sponsors, SaveCows.com, Zinpro, GPS Dairy Consulting, 40 Barn, Sure Gain Trout Nutrition, Munters, J&D Manufacturing, VES Artex, Ventec, and Kestrel Instruments. Thanks for tuning in to the Dairyland Initiative podcast. Want more Dairyland Initiative? Be sure to subscribe to our podcast, follow us on our socials, and visit our website for all of the latest recommendations in dairy cattle housing and management. See you next time.